I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You know, these commandments, when you look at them one by one, can be quite challenging. I know, just for example, thou shalt not steal. You might think, well, everyone should follow that, but if you're starving, or your kids or your family are struggling, you totally understand why sometimes people feel they have to steal. The old saying about this great text, though, is that as Moses comes down the mountain, God's people are already breaking the rules before they're even kind of fresh off the tablets. Why I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, the land of slavery, the prologue is so important. Walter Brueggemann, my favorite Hebrew scholar, really helps me at, I don't know if I'd call it 30,000 feet above the Ten Commandments, but a bigger picture of the Ten Commandments. And Walter's from, he's at down in Georgia, actually, Decatur, at University, Columbia there. And he's really helped me understand by breaking the Ten Commandments into two parts. So the first part is that God is personal and wants to have a relationship with us. The first four. God really cares about you and me, the whole world. And God's biggest concern for us is when we see in some translations that we've been emancipated from Egypt. Egypt is another word for Pharaoh. Now, there's been pharaohs throughout history. Some people might consider Stalin a pharaoh. They might consider Hitler. You could pick a politician today and maybe consider him a pharaoh as well if you want to. Pharaohs are the ones who have power over us, and God has come to set us free from all that power over us. That is a really key message for all of us today. It's personal to be in relationship with God. I found out as a young minister in Palmerston, as I was trying to, bring some new ideas to the congregation, I found out very quickly it's personal. God bless his soul, William, my clerk of session. Bill came to me one day and he said, John, you've been preaching a lot on this. It was a new book Bill Eastham, a big Texas preacher, had come out with, and it was called Dancing with Dinosaurs. Bill came up to me one day after I had preached, and he said, I really like you, John, but I have a strange feeling that you're calling me a dinosaur. I said, not me, it's Bill Eastham's calling you a dinosaur. No, I didn't, of course not. Bill Eastham was trying to shake the church up, but Bill was making a really valid point as the clerk of session to me. It's personal. And you better understand that as you preach that I'm listening, and he's just a wonderful man. We didn't agree on a lot. We disagreed on lots of things, but we respected and loved each other dearly. I miss him. It is personal. I found that out yesterday in the kitchen. Marion usually has me out serving. I was a waiter as a young kid. That's my natural gift. People. I had to work in the kitchen. I had to work with Art in the back there, and Chris, and of course we had Bobby there, Bob Wells, and Marion was keeping a tight ship, especially every time I dropped a sausage. I think I was up to 3, and I had a real fun time. Art, you really perfected the pancakes by the last half an hour when your family showed up. It was very good. I learned a lot about that personal journey, and I think that's the wonderful thing about Holly Fair. Where's Shirley? Shirley, you work very hard in that kitchen. Wow, the dishes, wow. They were hot plates, let me tell you. And what I realized about that is I was only in one little section of Holly Fair yesterday. And Trinity makes Holly Fair look easy because of all the hard work that's put into it. It's everybody here. And I know some of us can't maybe do what we once did, but the encouragement and the love, it goes a really long way. And, two things I learned about yesterday too is, where's Elizabeth? You brought your friends from Syria. Wow. To have those lovely, and they weren't the only ones. I took a few minutes, I took off. Two recently widowed women that don't go to Trinity but are curious. They said they'd never been to Holly Fair. And so I said, you're coming to Holly Fair. They took a taxi home, but they had a wonderful time here. And I thought, that is the beautiful thing about Holly Fair. It's not just the same people every year, it's new people. And that's what Trinity's about. God wants us to be in relationship not with God, not just God alone, but with one another. And Brueggemann makes it really apparently clear that the grip that Pharaoh has on our lives, the powers that be, here's the tough part of life. The pharaohs, they want us to produce and they demand us to be part of what Brueggemann calls the rat race of consumption. It's a part of a rat race that causes anxiety and fear. It's the woman who's working with my wife and says, I've got 2 kids in hockey and it's costing $10,000 a year. We love hockey, but we got to keep doing it. And you just shake your heads at times and go, of course, there's many parents that can't even afford $10,000 a year for hockey. But there's pressure in this world. And some days I come away from Holly Fair and think to myself, this is such a beautiful thing. But there are so many young people that are racing off to hockey and dance and all the other things in life. How will they ever find time to do what is so much fun for so many of us yesterday? Brueggemann says, Pharaoh has a lot of power over us. Pharaoh expects us to work 24/7. Pharaoh, he even uses the words of ism, the idols of racism, nationalism, sexism. These are all powers that God is calling us to stand up against, to say enough is enough. I often feel kind of old-fashioned when I think about wanting the Sabbath to come back. And I remember the days at my age, even when everything was closed on Sundays. I mean, restaurants were open, I guess, but I remember a wonderful gentleman came up from the States. He was my next door neighbor where I lived in Palmerston. And he said, John, I've been in the States long enough. He goes, I'm sorry, where there's a buck to be made, it doesn't matter how religious they are, they're going to open on Sundays. That was his I've been in the South. They might be Bible believing, but they want to make a buck. I go off to Europe, and I know it's a cultural thing, but spending time in Italy or France, I suddenly realize, is it ever refreshing to have a day of pause? And they may not be all cramming the cathedrals, but there's something we've really lost by saying that we have to go 24/7. Challenge for all of us. So Brueggemann in the first 4 is saying, stand up with God against the powers that be. The last part of, I'm not going to go into the detail of each of the commandments, but he said it's really, the second part is about really how we care for our neighbors with dignity, how we don't take advantage of others, and how we don't let greed take over us. And I guess I want to close the message with this one. Every time we have communion on the first Sunday, we try to promote Contact Place and Benevolent Fund. And Contact Place, is Tuesday mornings, emergency food. You come to Trinity and you get it. And we've been doing that for years here at Trinity. Benevolent Fund is where Reverend Galen and myself support people who are in crisis. If you read the council minutes, you'll note, though, there's some people that have crises every week, and we have to address that. So council's wisely said, we're going to support them twice a year, usually around Christmas, usually around Easter, and with food. But there's also something I want to speak about. It's like when the social worker calls up in the local neighborhood that we live in and says, got a situation right now where somebody is really down and out. They finally got work again, but their landlord's about ready to kick them out. I got Salvation Army committing $400. Would Trinity support $400? Those don't happen every week. They happen a couple times a year. But as Rob, our treasurer of council, said the other night, it's pretty good to have a benevolent fund that sits at about $1,000, $2,000. And our benevolent fund often has been that way, and of this past year, it's been down to about 300. And so I just raise that as a little bit of a note to you that if you're the kind of soul that just likes to help somebody who you will never meet, but you know you're helping somebody when they're down and out, the benevolent fund is something that you can do once a month, and you can just support in whatever way that you can. Because here's what the last part of the Ten Commandments means for me, and I think what Bergerman is trying to say. You know, it might be foolishness to the world that we gather to worship God. It might be foolishness that we care about a wounded soul on a road that everybody else has got no time for, and we actually pay attention. It might seem foolishness that we forgive 70 times. Might be foolishness to others that we actually believe in a fair wage for all people. It might be foolishness to the world that we care about a wayward son, a child that comes home, even after blowing all the generosity of a parent, that the daughter or son comes home and we welcome them with great joy. That might be foolishness to the world, but to those who follow Jesus, that's what we call love. And so I just want to close by saying, Trinity, thank you for all your love. You live out the commandments of God, to love God, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And may it continue for us all. Thanks be to God.